You are now listening to the Local Anxiety Podcast. My name is James Cascia. On this week's episode, I have a special guest, my good friend, Tom Dutta. This is a two-part series. You are currently now listening to the first part. Just a heads up, hydration was not in the equation when I recorded this episode. Hope you guys enjoy. Thank you. Hello, my name is James Cascia, and you are now listening to the Local Anxiety Podcast. Today, I have a special guest. His name is Tom Dutta. He is an award-winning CEO, speaker, and international #1 best-selling author with over 30 years' experience, transforming leaders and companies worldwide. Tom's experience spans the education, financial, IT, telco, non-for-profit, health sectors. His career includes senior roles in many Canadian companies, including founder, CEO, and chairman of the board. Tom is the host and executive producer of the Quiet Warrior internet radio show. As founder and CEO of Create, Tom is an authority on what motivates leaders, actions. Tom's business experience and 10-year study of the science behind success has enabled him to create a proven coaching and mentorship formula called the Way of the Quiet Warrior. Tom won the Moving America Forward Award special TV series and the 2018 Courage to Come Back certificate. Of the top 3 nomination finalists, his incredible mental health journey. These narratives will be a part of Tom's latest film project, taking his life story to the big screen. His purpose is to lift the stigma of mental health in the workplace. Tom has served as chairman of the board, pioneering a shift in the access to mental health services for over a decade, and an advocate for programs serving mental health. His talk at TEDx Bear Creek is about the important role leaders have in lifting the stigma around mental health. Tom's beautiful wife, Anna, his 3 children, 1 granddaughter, and miniature Shih Tzu, Shadow, are the lights that shine brightest in his life. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Tom Dutta.
James, pleasure to be on your show. I've been listening to your podcast, thoroughly enjoying it.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. So, Tom, we are here live at the Bell Center for Performing Arts in beautiful Surrey, British Columbia. And we're just kind of taking in the sights. And I got inspired while we're here is to start asking you some questions about your experience in the TEDx event that you just did.
Yeah, no, it's great being on the mobile studio with you, James. You know, I'm just sitting here now, and I'm literally looking at the backstage of Bell Performing Arts Center. And February 29th, you know, after a year of hard work, stood on the stage to do my first TEDx talk. It was surreal. And today at the Bell Center here, there's children around because it's connected to a school. I don't know if people know this, but the Bell Center for Performing Arts has a capacity of about 1,100 or 1,000 people. It's a full production theater, and it's part of a school, and school district number 36 actually owns it, which is really cool. So, you know, the students get to see every day magical things happening. But I was here and I was nervous. I was sitting here like I am with you, and I was literally feeling all those nerves and emotions getting ready to stand on that stage. And I want to say thanks because I want your audience to know that you've been with me on this journey, and you were in the audience that day with some of my other friends. And you know, when you introduced me, I think one of the jobs I'm most proudest of is really the one where you and I met. As a part of the story maybe we'll get into, but you know, if we didn't meet, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
No, that is true. And yes, I do want to get into that part of the story because that is a huge part of this podcast. The one thing I really wanted to get into right away is the energy. I wanted you to go walk me through the energy that you felt in the presence of that theater when you, let's say before you even went up, just sitting in the back. Can you just tell me how that felt?
Well, you know, so I'm going to tell people that one of the things you realize when you become successful, and I don't always like to read my bio because I want people to know that I'm an average guy who started just like everybody, working hard. You know, my dad, who passed away in 2018 unexpectedly from a heart attack, and I dedicated my TED Talk to my dad. My dad was an immigrant. He was, we were parents are from Fiji. I was born in England on a military base on the way here. But Dad was an electrician and then became a teacher, and he taught the electrical trade. My uncle was a plumber. And I grew up with just hardworking people and learned that. My dad was also in the military, James, and taught me that, the two things you do when you come to this country of Canada where I live is you never put your hand out. You work hard. You treat people with respect, and success will come to you. And that's really what I did through my career. So when you read the bio, there was no magic there. I just took some of my values and found good people to work with around me. But I'm rambling. I want to get back to what we're talking about, the energy. So I'll take you back into that day. So there I am, and the Bell Center has a green room. It's two floors down, and as I came into the building that morning, it was about 7:30, and so the doors opened to the building at 8 o'clock, and it was a 9 to 5 day. And you have to picture that TEDx. There's 4,000 stages around the world. This is not a small event by any means. It's connected to something bigger. And so, they have video cameras and everything set up because we're really walking into a studio to film. And so 8 o'clock, the doors open. 8:25, they have a marching band come on stage called the Screaming Eagles Marching Band, a high school band. But these guys have won awards, and we were told they were spectacular. So I'm down in the green room, and if you can picture in Hollywood, they have those dressing rooms. There's 3 of them, and bright lights. I have my little corner of the world, and I'm sitting there. I'm not changed yet into my wardrobe. I'm nervous and anxious, and all of a sudden I hear the floor rumbling, and I'm going like, "What the? There's an earthquake!" And literally the place started to come alive, and then I started hearing, and 10, 15 minutes later, people screaming and cheering. And so I actually left the green room, and I walked up the long walk down the hallway, and there's a couple doors. One says, "Don't go in here or the boogeyman will get you." And that was backstage right. And then the door beside it said backstage left, which is what we were trained as speakers to go up that and enter on the left side. Well, I came up to the backstage left, and I walked out. And if you're in a theater, behind these stages curtain, there's rigging and there's all sorts of gear, and it's a massive space. And you look up and you see everything lights. And I hear the band's just pounding it, and the place is going crazy. And I'm telling you, man, you feed off energy. My adrenaline started going, and I started getting excited. But on the flip side, I started getting anxious, and my heart rate started increasing and nervous. And part of working on doing a professional talk like this, I had a speaking coach who actually, she happened to win the #2 in the world. So the bar was high. She was coaching me, and she said, "Tom," she says, "whenever I go on stage and speak, I bring a bucket because I want to throw up after." And so you hear people talk about their speaking, and I got to tell you that even though the energy was great, I mean, I was in a mess in my head, and so I had to do a lot of things to control my emotions. But that's how it was. It was absolutely incredible.
Wow, Tom, that's amazing. I loved hearing insight on speakers going up to perform anything. Now, this was a packed house. We're talking almost 1,000 people were in this theater, and the energy was so amazing on my end, and that's why I'd love to get the insight on how you were going through it. So that being said, that's amazing. I love to hear that testimony there. So another question that I really wanted to ask you was the prep for this talk. Walk me through the journey that you went through to take it from the beginning of its infancy of writing this to performing it.
Well, how much time do we have? I mean, I don't even know I can do that in one interview. The thing about that is it's a long story. People don't realize this, but so first thing is, I guess maybe I want to tell people what a TED Talk is. It was kind of funny because at work the other night, I said, some fella comes up to me and he says, "Where were you?" Because I was away for a while. I took a leave, and I said, "I was doing a TED Talk." He looks at me and goes, "Is that the guy with the glasses?" And I'm just looking at him like, what? And I'm going to blank, right? I'm going, okay, whatever you think it is. But a TED Talk, TED stands for Technology, Engineering, and Design. And, over a decade or so ago, a bunch of gearheads got together in Silicon Valley in the U.S. And, these would be very smart people in these industries. And the idea was masterminding, sharing ideas, trying to come up with breakthroughs. And it really didn't go anywhere. And then Chris Anderson, who's the founder now and the CEO of TED, I as the good story goes, he might have bought the company. It's a not-for-profit, so it's not in business to make money. He bought it and he turned it into what it is. Today, speakers from all over the world want to be on the TED stage. The average talks are, 12 minutes. They have short talks, 6 to 8 minutes. And the idea is that if I was to say to you or people listening to this, that take your whole life, everything that's happened in your career, business, personally, family, find one single thread, one single idea worth spreading that the world wants to hear about. That's a new idea that could create a shift in someone's thinking, or an existing idea that you have a new twist on. That's what TED is all about. So when you listen to the talks, they're powerful talks. They're almost, I call them magical. And they're used all around the world now. And for teaching, you'll see a lot of people in business and in schools say, watch this TED Talk, watch that TED Talk. And a lot of the people who have done TED Talks have gone on to do things and change the world. They've had an idea in their burning inside them. The TED process has brought it out. And the TED platform, the stage, has given them access to the world. And so how did this all happen? It's a long story, but I try to cut to the gist of it, that I've been trying for 3 years to do a TED Talk. Now, the Bear Creek Park one, which is in Surrey, is the largest TED stage in Western Canada. And people may not know this, but TED New York, which is TED organization, they do their major conference every year in Vancouver at the Convention Center. And they actually spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a customized stage. So if you go to that event, it costs you about $10,000 US to get into. It's a long wait list. 5 days, some 90 talks, and the curator, the license holder of our event that we had here, went to it. And he would tell you it was magical. 90 talks, and he was just energized, and you come away really thinking about the world differently. So after, his name's Alan, after he came from that event, he said, when we want to take Bear Creek Park and turn it into a magical event that people want to come to every year, that's going to grow, and we want to make this a VIP experience. So people come and they really feel like, it's an experience they'll never forget. And so the bar was really high. The stage, this is their 3rd year, but this is the first year they were allowed to have 1,000 people. So I'll talk about that for a sec. So what Big TED does is they say 10 years ago they wanted to expand the distribution or the network of TED Talks. Well, how do you do that when you only have, a small footprint? They said, well, we're going to start issuing licenses. So it'd be no different as you having, a local theater stage and they run multiple stages. So today, TED's in 4,000 countries around the world. And when we did our event, they mentioned that some of the events that were happening in the world that same day were in countries like Italy and Germany. You can just go down the list. And now here. So pretty big opportunity to get onto that stage. But sadly, these events go for a day, and like this one, you can only have so many speakers. So when I first applied for my TED Talk, there was 200 applications, and they shortlisted 25, which means they choose you based on what they read. And then you have an audition, and you have 10 minutes to literally walk in a room and explain or act out, whatever you're going to do, show your idea. Now remember, you just have an idea, and they don't tell you what to do. You just have to come in and convince them that it's an idea worth spreading. And then you literally will get a call within 2 weeks after saying you made it, or you won't get a call. You'll be told you didn't make it. So when I tried the first year, the idea I had wasn't the right idea, I guess. But the other part of it is, which I used as an excuse for a while, which now I realize wasn't an excuse, but my dad died the same week of my audition. I was shortlisted. My dad had died. So the funeral was the same day as the audition, and my family got so courageous. I asked them to move the funeral date, and we did. So I came in there after a couple months of preparing, and I just didn't cut it. And so I was very disappointed, especially since I promised my dad I wanted to do it, fulfill it. My second year when I tried, I applied again, and they shortlisted me. So they saw something in me. I had a different topic. And, 3 weeks before my audition, I was doing the Ride to Conquer Cancer, and that's a 225-kilometer bicycle ride on my over 2 days that went from Cloverdale to Hope and back. In the night of the first leg of the ride, I fell in a bathtub. I slipped and fell and cracked a hole in the bathtub, and actually got my first brain injury. And I didn't know it. And I slept in pain all night, and my wife was there with me, and I literally said, people who have cancer don't have a choice. So I'm thinking about a friend of mine now. His name's Young, and I work with him, and he's dealing with stage 4 of cancer. But I was riding for people like him, and I remember saying, I'm going to ride. I didn't know what a concussion brain injury is. I didn't even know I had it. I was just being naive and thought my head hurts pretty bad. And so I hopped on the bike, and I told my team captain I was riding with 80 riders. There was over 2,000 riders in the race. And I remember that morning, and I said to him, hey, there's emergency services every 10 kilometers where we break. If I have problems, I'll just stop. But I finished the ride. I did the 100 kilometers the next day, and my wife brought me home, and I was not in good shape and got checked out and found out, I had a brain injury. And it's 19 months later now, and I'm still dealing with that, symptoms of problems with my eyes and a little bit of my headaches and whatever you have. And I talk about it now openly. It was part of my TED Talk, but I literally fell so hard, no pun, but I slipped into depression and anxiety. And for those of you who will watch my TED Talk when the video's out, it's called How Leaders Can Lift the Stigma of Mental Health. I tell the whole story, right, from being a kid and growing up, becoming a CEO early, and then, the ups and downs of my career, and then this big event that led me down a path where I pretty much, my life stopped. And so anyway, I ramble, but that's the whole big picture about what TED Talks are, the stage, and you asked me to tell you how I got here. This year, I got here because of me and one lady, and she was my coach, and I sat down with her, and we started talking months before, and she dug deep and deep and deep, and I didn't want to admit something personal I was dealing with because I was ashamed of it, and she said something, and it triggered it, and it came out. And when I said what I said, she said something that was her story, which is similar, not the same, but somewhat similar. And that started me down the path of creating this TED Talk, which is an idea that I'm going to crack open and shift the world's thinking on mental health, which is why I like your podcast. And so, you can ask me and dig into that more when I give it back to you. But I want to finish by saying that doing this was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. I've spoken for 30 years on stages in front of 100 up to 2,000 people, but as a business leader with PowerPoints and scripts and podiums, sharing information about business, but never revealing the true story of my life. Even though I did write a book and there's some things in that you might talk about too, but this was a very, very difficult day by revealing really the real Tom story to the world. And I had my daughter live streaming it from back east. My wife and a lot of people in the audience who knew me from business and all didn't really know the true story, what was behind my life till now. And I just feel great that, we're now a few days after, and it feels awesome to do that.
Wow. Thank you, Tom, for that.
I told you how much time do we have. I mean, just have to shut me up here.
We have all the time in the world. There's a lot to unfold here, people. The one thing I really want to do is to honor you for sharing that with us. That your story is so powerful that it touches me in so many ways. I just can't wait to introduce more of you to our listeners, because this is what drew me to you in the first place. Now, I'm going to be jumping back a little bit here, but I'm going to tell you how I met Tom. I met Tom at work. I work at Costco.
It was in a bar. What are you talking about? I was in a bar and I saw this guy, and
you have a brain injury. You don't remember.
You wanted to buy me a Kool-Aid, and I'm going like, what kind of guy would want to buy me a Kool-Aid? No. All right, back to reality now. My anxiety kicked in there.
Back to reality is Tom is suffering from an injury. We're going to give him grace on that. But we worked at Costco, and I got moved into a different department, which is the produce department. And I had already worked with some of the guys before, but there were some new faces. Tom was one of those new faces. And as I was reacclimating into the role, I got to get to know some of the new faces. And as I got to know Tom, the first thing I realized is there was something very different about him. And it's a good thing, by the way. There was something so unique about the way he spoke, the way he carried himself. But more than that, as I got to know the person, unbelievable stuff started flowing through. We connected on a deeper level because we both share the same passion for sharing our stories of struggle about mental health and our own stories. And Tom gave everything he had to me within just a few days. And it was so special. He revealed so much about himself. And we started just bouncing back and forth with our own stories of struggle and triumphs. And Tom later revealed to me that he has different things outside of work that he's been doing, that he sits on a board of mental health. And these are all legit things that this man has been doing. And it is so inspiring. So just being around Tom is just so inspiring because he's so open with his stories of struggle. And I was never more proud than when he got up on stage and delivered the performance of a lifetime, people. I can't wait for you guys to be able to see this on YouTube, because this man bared his soul and has such a powerful message that we all need to hear. So I'm just honored to be able to sit next to this man right now and go through his journey with him and learn more about him.
So now you can pass the Kleenex box. So I you know, you when you said something, my head's going in a different direction. So I don't want to give away the talk, but if I were to perform it, it's in my head. And the first part of the talk starts out by me acting out a story, part of a real story that happened, and then it leads into everything else. And but the part in the story about Costco comes a little bit later, and so I reveal the reality of being a somebody of high success, taking a big fall. And I like to say that God sent me into Costco because it was through the fog, not being able to think properly, not being able to use my eyes properly, that I was able to see clearly. And what was interesting is when my therapists and doctors said, you got to let your brain heal. And I was still functional. I could do things, but my brain wasn't working right. Physically, I was super healthy. And so I dumbed down my resume when I applied to Costco. And I remember the interview. I applied online, so I'll be really transparent with you. It was 2 months before Christmas. My income, my whole business stopped. I have a training company, a people development company that I run, and a whole bunch of other things, which you can ask me about if you want as well. But when you've built something in a career and all of a sudden it stops, I just want everybody to realize is that you're not invincible. You're not the Black Knight in Monty Python's quest for the Holy Grail. It's but a scratch. It's only a flesh wound. That's literally how I was living my life is, and all of a sudden my arm and leg got lopped off, and let's say that's my career and my brain, and it's like, what do I do? So tomorrow we could all experience something, a slip or a fall, and be stopped in tracks, and I didn't know what to do. And so I remember when they told me that it was Christmas, I was barely able to afford to buy gifts and things, and I was slipping into depression. I didn't even know all this. I didn't also know about what depression was or concussions were when the brain. So the way to explain is if you have a snow globe, you know what that is?
Yeah, of course I do.
And you shake it up and all those little snowflakes, that's the chemicals of your brain. So when you get concussed, the brain sits in liquid, it sloshes and bangs around, and those chemicals become dislodged and they land wherever they want. And the part I fell on, I was literally in a bath. So I stepped into the bathtub. It was at a motel. My wife was with me. And something was wrong in there because the tub was extremely slippery. I hadn't even reached for soap or anything. My feet were dry. I was standing on a mat, a bath rug, and my right foot started skating back and forth. And then I started freaking out my left foot. And next thing you know, they both went out from underneath me straight forward. And I cowered to break my fall, and I fell backwards on my back. And the force of the fall drove my head into the back of the tub surround like a battering ram. And I blacked out. And I remember coming to, and the water was just streaming on me, and I was in this excruciating pain and just screamed. And I couldn't even stand up. I didn't want to get back up in the tub. I rolled out of it. And that's kind of where it began. And then, of course, getting on a bicycle for 100 kilometers, you can imagine. But when the doctor said in November, you're slipping into this state, if you sit at home and ruminate, you're going to get worse. Because depression is really prolonged thoughts of sadness, and when you fall into depression, you can have depression, but when it's clinically diagnosed, it's an emotion, sadness of you don't know why, and it goes on for at least 2 weeks. So it was that plus anxiety that started happening because my brain didn't work and I didn't know what my life would be. So not making my story sound like it's worse than anybody else's. I mean, I'm still alive, but I couldn't pay my bills, and so when they said that, I used to shop at Costco. I used to spend $1,000 a month there when I had my kids grown. I have a daughter who's in high school or university now. My 2 stepsons are grown, but I used to pull up to the Willingdon Costco and fill up my car after coming home. I was a CEO traveling, still in my suit. And now I'm looking at these people in line going like, you used to be me. What the heck? Why are you spending so much money? Don't spend that much money. I did it. I racked up my Costco credit card. Anyway, so I used to love going in there and fascinated by the distribution and the warehouse and stuff. And I also used to say, geez, if I ever had a second job, it'd be kind of fun to work here. And Home Depot was my second choice, and then Starbucks. And so I applied online at all 3, and Costco called me first. And when you apply online, you have to put in your resume. So I just put it in there. I said, the last year I've been not working. My dad had died and just had some challenges with my health. But prior to that, I have a little training company and some things I do. So I didn't really put more than that because I wanted a phone call. And this was for seasonal 2 months work at just a minimum wage type thing. But it was a combination of shame and guilt. The day I walked in for my interview, first of all, I didn't even know how to handle it. I was wearing jeans and black T-shirt, my leather jacket. And this is the first time since I was up in what they call the penthouse that I really had to go down the ground floor, and it was surreal. So I sat down for the interview, and the lady who interviewed me, she looks at my resume, and it wasn't my real resume, which you just read. She says, you know what? You could run this place. She said, you're overqualified. And I said, well, I have a little training company, but I said, here's the reality. I'm not doing too good. I had to change my life. I just want a break. And so she looked at me and she said, okay, well, why do you want to work here? And I told her what I just told you. I went to Costco shopping and stuff, and I loved it. And then I looked her in the eyes, and this is who I am. I said, and I inspire people to know that greatness is within them. And some people say you're nuts saying this, but I looked at her and I said, I know it's only till December. And I said, I'm grateful if you guys hire me. But I said, if I'm not in your top 5% of workers after the first 2 months, you should fire me. And James, she looks at me.
Yeah.
She looks at me and she goes, oh, no, I'm going to hire you. She says, go and get a pair of steel-toed shoes. I didn't even know what those were, by the way, and report back for orientation. And so I walked out of there not even knowing what was coming, what this was all about. I didn't even know what stocking really was. When I was a kid, I worked on the job site. I was pulling electrical wire. I grew up doing jobs like, worker jobs. But just remember 30 years of my career I was a manager at age 21, a CEO by age 31. And then, my career stayed at that level. And so I took the elevator to the penthouse, but I never stopped to look at the floors in between. And that was the biggest breakthrough in my TED Talk and working at Costco, is really understanding on the ground floor, which I never really saw, what people really want, and learning about who I really was. I was tired of walking in the lunchroom and having employees in the company around just stay away from you because they think you're this CEO monolith type thing. And, what do we say? And they're different. I mean, it's true. We're far removed because of who we are. We have a stigma. People think we're certain things. And we have the accountability of sometimes taking people's lives away or changing them or making them great. And some people look at us and think, I can't be like that person, so I can't, be friends with them. So I never really had people in my life, because I grew so fast, really treating me like a human being. I was around all these high-powered, high-paid people in a lifestyle which is really far removed from reality. We know, and I know, that all the real human beings who build the world are the Costco workers, the people who run the companies. And so coming into Costco that first shift, and then, wind it forward a bit, I was trained and learned to do night stocking. I was so embarrassed, I didn't even know how to operate a pallet jack. I remember someone said, go get a pallet jack. And I'm going like, I'm thinking to myself, what's that? I don't want to tell them I don't know what that is. And then the first time they said, you better make sure you punch in. I didn't even know how to work a time clock. Seriously. So it's like, what the? And well, you're like learning to walk all over again. At the same time, you're valuing the work, and you're wanting to stay because you got to pay your bills. And so James you came into the department because there was a change, and I met you. And it's true. James and I didn't reveal really, because here's the reason why I didn't, because I didn't want anybody treating me like I was somebody different. Management knew I was a bit different, but I was there to work and be like everybody else and prove what I did to get where I was, like my dad taught me, that I'm just an average guy who can work hard like anybody else. And if I overwork other people, I can get recognized. And that's really, and so I'll finish with this. The last piece of it is, there was a moment on the floor. I talked to a lot of people, but I kept my nose to the grindstone, just worked. And I was 40 pounds heavier than I am today. So thank you, Costco, for giving me a lifetime membership for physical fitness. Because holy crap, my Fitbit tracks 15 to 24,000 steps a shift. And this isn't a square footage the size of a small apartment. I'm going like, what the hell? And then part of me starts saying, this is what all the people, when I was driving home from my big tower office with my lifestyle, and I'm passing people on the road, this is where all the people are going to work, night shifts and to the stores and to keep the world going. You don't see all that. And you really don't see the effort sometimes in some lines of work like this, the physical side of it. And I was blown away, but I was proud because I sucked it up, and I think I was one of the best people there in the team with all my other peers working. And I always treated people like I cared about them. I didn't come across as a know-it-all. And I was a sponge. I said, show me how to do this, and then I copied it. Teach me this, and I copied it. So one of the things I'll say is if you want to be great, go find people who've done it and learn it and copy it, which is why I connected to James. And so that part of the story where we started talking one night and something you said triggered something I said. And then I decided to reveal a bit of my story to you. And what blew me away is when you see something like James and most people in business, the stigma of mental health is you're afraid to talk about it because you get judged. You get told you might be somebody will crack and melt into an emotional puddle, incapable and reliable and broken. Well, imagine being a CEO or a manager and having mental health challenges, which is normal, by the way. Most people have this at times in their life, and feeling if you say anything about it, you're going to be seen as incapable. There goes your job. And so the world has put up a stigma around this, and it's not really fair. So there I was, and James started talking to me about his lifeline, his background, and the word anxiety came out. We started talking about everything. And then there it led to this connection. And what I want to make sure people understand is, James is somebody that's special because, and I know you couldn't see this, but the story changed where now James is mentoring me, if you want to call it the undercover CEO, which I don't like, but he's mentoring me. I've got all this experience and wisdom, but I'm learning from him. And I've told you this, and if you deflect it, I'll hit you again. That I told James, I said, what you're teaching me is how to be who I am, how to actually be valued. I don't want people coming up, shaking my hand and saying, oh, you have a book and all this. No, just treat me like I'm Tom. Tell me jokes, kid around with me. I have not seen that in my life for so long, and it's a lonely world at the top. They call it isolation when you're up there, and you get treated differently, and that's where some of the mental health comes from. You can't talk to your family or your boss about how you're feeling when you start stressing. This was like coming to work every night, physically working out, and being with people who care about you, and I cared about. The ones I knew, the other ones who didn't talk to me, I didn't really know. And so that opened up, and so when I got the gig to do the TED Talk, which happened in November, I had a long journey ahead, and I remember I needed a friend. I didn't have anybody. I mean, all my pals were C-level executives or VPs of companies, and I was ashamed of calling them, saying, "By the way, this is what I'm doing now, and can you help me with some things with my TED Talk?" Because they judge you, right? They judge you, and they don't want to have anything to do with you. That's part of the stigma. So I asked James to start coming over to my place. I have a little theater in the place I live, and right from the beginning when I wrote the script, we had to rehearse, and James came and he sat down, and I was terrible. I want you to talk about this from your perspective and be honest. I was bad. I was somebody I wasn't. I was trying to become, this person, and I was clunky, and it's just like, but as you go through and you learn to be professional speaking, you learn about body language and you learn about the impact on people. It was so much. I'm now a professional speaker in a way I've never been. And what you saw on the stage there, James, is what really 6 months of hard work, hundreds of hours of practice, but creating the right script. But also, it's really my life that came out through that story. But you're the one person, nobody else except my coach actually saw that journey. And so I just want to say that to you, honestly, with that I'm grateful for that, because I don't think if I had you to walk beside me through this, especially because I want to just talk about this one thing for a minute, that I'm taking a course called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. And
You have just reached the end of this week's episode of Part 1. Now I know you're thinking, come on, the end? Don't worry, folks. Next week we pick up right where we left off with my good friend, Tom Dutta. Thank you.